massacres, monster madness around the world. Today, we're in Cambodia. The country has had a 50-year history of horror films, with The Crocodile Man being one of the first acclaimed works. These films flourished until the Vietnamese occupation and transition. So, filmmaking in Cambodia pretty much came to a stop for a long time, and when it did come back in the late 80s, horror films were still generally prohibited. But in the 2000s, they had a huge revival. In fact, the horror genre is one of the biggest in Cambodia. Their themes go back to the spiritual hauntings of folklore and mythology. They took a lot of influence from Japanese and Korean horror, but also took cues from American gore fests. They have independent cinemas that play locally produced horror flicks, while larger multiplexes show international films, both Asian and Western. Today's film, Run, is from 2013, but don't confuse it with the other Run from 2013, the American action thriller about a parkouring teenager. I almost watched the wrong fucking movie, and while you're at it, check out the list of Run movies on Wikipedia and IMDb. Holy fucking shit, 200 titles called Run? Please, for the love of God, if you're making a movie, don't call it Run. This movie looks like it's over 30 years old. Hard to believe it was 8 years ago. Even the acting and plot is right out of a bad 80s movie. I don't want to be harsh because the movie does try, and it's a very low budget. However, it's definitely in that weird subgenre of films that are so bad that it's good, maybe? I can't fault the movie for hodgepodging a bunch of zombie tropes and cliches because, let's face it, all zombie movies do it. It would be okay if plot points were a pinch clear, but nothing makes sense. For example, what school are they in? High school? A medical college? They act like they're in high school, passing notes, sleeping in class, fighting over a girl, and then going to parties, but could they at least establish the characters better? All the montages drag for longer than they should. And what's the point of trying to show this bond if we don't even fully know their names? The zombie infection moves fast with everyone partying and no one noticing the sudden breaking news. And then all hell just erupts. Then the story splits with survivors in buildings and on the streets, kind of like Quarantine and 28 Days Later. Again, just every zombie movie plot you can think of is blended together. I love when a virus in a zombie movie was intended for good, like curing cancer, but it turns the patient into a flesh-eating monster instead. How many weeks of funding was that? Also, you ever notice in a good zombie movie, when they're dealing with a very dangerous virus, everyone is completely sterilized? They use gloves that are inside a box, so the virus is airtight. But here it looks like the kitchen in your elementary school cafeteria. There's a scene where a character dies, and I think they push it a little too far with a black and white flashback of all the memories they had with him. I mean, wow, they really overdo it here. Oh geez, the audio. What did he say? What? I can't say much else for the rest of the movie. It's just a bunch of screaming, shooting, people getting plucked off and eaten by zombies, and just surviving until everyone gets to a safe place. It definitely falls into the zombie trend of the millennium, where you get so used to seeing characters running from a crowd of zombies and then being mauled. There's lots of shaky cameras, so disclaimer for those who get motion sickness. So what can you say? It's a zombie film. It's one of those. But it's made on a small budget, and you have to give them credit for adding to the library of horror.